The forest had become completely silent. 4 players were left: Marcus Hill, Emily Torres, Tyler Grant, and Detective Mara Collins. The tall creature stood behind them, watching, waiting. Its blade arm glistened in the moonlight. The voice came again. Slow, cold. Final round. Last one alive wins. The children turn. Marcus raised his metal rod. Tyler tightened his grip on the knife. Emily held the axe, but her hands were shaking. They slowly began walking toward Detective Collins. Collins' heart was pounding. She had no weapon, just Evan Holt's notebook in her hand. And suddenly she remembered something written inside it. A sentence she almost ignored. The weapons speak, but they can also be silenced. The hidden page. Collins quickly opened the notebook. One page was folded. Inside was a strange drawing. A symbol carved into the ground. A circle, with broken weapons inside it. And under it, Evan had written, "The weapons only control you if you listen." Break their voice. Collins tries something. Marcus was now only a few steps away. He raised the rod. But Collins shouted loudly, "Drop the weapons!" Her voice echoed through the forest. For a moment nothing happened. Then Emily flinched. Her axe shook in her hands. Collins shouted again, "The weapons are lying to you." Emily fights back. Emily screamed suddenly. A real scream. She dropped the axe. The weapon hit the ground with a loud metal sound. And the whispering stopped. Emily fell to her knees, crying. The creature immediately turned toward her. Its voice became angry. Player broken. Player removed. The ground under Emily began to shake. Like something below the earth was waking up. Collins realizes the final truth. The weapons were not just tools. They were feeding something underground. Every time the children fought, something below the town was growing stronger. That was the real purpose of the game. Not survival. Not victory. Sacrifice. The last choice. Marcus and Tyler were still holding their weapons. Their eyes empty. Controlled. Collins stepped forward slowly. "You don't have to listen to them," she said. "Throw them away." Tyler's knife trembled. For a moment it looked like he might drop it. But Marcus suddenly attacked. The metal rod swung through the air. Tyler raised his knife to defend himself. The final fight had begun. The creature moves. The tall creature stepped closer, watching the battle. Its blade arm glowing faintly now. The ground beneath the forest was rumbling louder. Something huge was moving below, waiting to be fed. Collins makes a decision. Detective Collins grabbed the axe Emily dropped. The weapon immediately began whispering in her mind. Dark thoughts. Violent thoughts. But Collins ignored them. Instead of attacking the children, she turned and ran toward the creature. The impossible moment. The creature looked surprised. No one had ever attacked it before. Collins screamed and swung the axe with all her strength. Not at the creature. At its blade arm. The metal cracked loudly. For a moment the forest went completely silent. Then the weapon shattered. Pieces of metal fell to the ground. And the whispering voices stopped. Everything changes. Marcus dropped his rod. Tyler dropped the knife. Like they had suddenly woken from a nightmare. The creature let out a horrible sound. A deep scream that shook the trees. The ground cracked open beneath it. The earth began pulling the creature downward, back into the darkness below. The last words. Before it disappeared completely, the creature looked directly at Detective Collins and whispered one final sentence. "The weapons cannot be destroyed, only buried again." Then it vanished into the ground. The forest became silent. The game was finally over. 6 months later, Harper's Creek tried to return to normal. The forest was sealed forever. The mine tunnels under the town were filled with concrete, and the remaining weapons were locked deep inside a government facility. Detective Collins left the town. She never wanted to see the forest again. But one night, thousands of miles away, Inside a dark evidence storage room, a security camera recorded something strange. A metal weapon lying inside a locked box. Slowly moving. Very slightly. Then a faint whisper came from the box. Barely audible. But the camera microphone recorded it clearly. Round 1. The end. The night after the whisper from the basement, Elena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the voice again. Soon, the ugly one will belong to us. Morning came with gray skies and a cold wind blowing through Brindle Hollow. The village looked normal again, but Elena felt something had changed. The house felt alive. The walls creaked even when no one moved. The floorboards groaned under invisible weight. And sometimes she heard footsteps in empty rooms. At breakfast, Clara was glowing with excitement. "The ball is only 3 nights away," she said happily. She looked at Margaret. "Mother, what dress will I wear?" Margaret smiled warmly. "The most beautiful dress in the village." Clara laughed with joy. But Elena noticed something strange. Margaret never looked at Clara when she said it. She was staring at Elena. After breakfast, Margaret gave Elena a new task. "Clean the old attic," she said. "No one has been there for years." Elena nodded quietly. She took the lantern and climbed the narrow wooden stairs. The attic door groaned when she pushed it open. Dust filled the air. Broken furniture sat in dark corners. But something else caught her attention. A large wooden chest. Old. Locked. Carved with strange symbols. Elena knelt beside it. The lock was rusted. She pulled gently. The metal snapped. The chest opened with a dry crack. Inside were old papers and photographs. Elena picked up the first photograph. Her hands began to shake. It showed the Voss house. But the picture looked very old. At least 100 years old. Standing in front of the house was a girl. Dark hair. Crooked smile. Uneven eyes. She looked exactly like Elena. Elena dropped the photo. "No, that's impossible." She grabbed another one. Another girl. Same face. Another photo. Another girl. Same face again. Dozens of pictures. All from different years. Different dresses. Different times. But every girl looked almost identical. Like copies. Like the same girl being born again and again. And every photo had the same words written on the back. "The chosen stepsister." Elena's breathing became fast. Then she found a journal. The pages were yellow and fragile. She opened it slowly. The first entry was written in shaky ink. Year 1872. The house demands a daughter every generation. She must be the unwanted one. The ugly one. The one no one loves. Only then will the thing beneath remain asleep. Elena turned the page with trembling hands. If the chosen girl is not given, the creature will rise and take the entire village. Her heart pounded. Another page. The ritual must happen during the winter ball. Another page. She must walk willingly into the basement. Another page. And the house will finally eat. Elena slammed the journal shut. Her stomach twisted. No, no. Footsteps creaked behind her. Elena turned quickly. Clara stood in the doorway, smiling. "How much did you read?" Clara asked softly. Elena's voice shook. This is insane." Clara walked slowly into the attic. She picked up one of the photographs. "Oh," she said calmly. "You found them. You knew about this." Clara laughed quietly. "Of course." Elena stared at her. "You knew they were sacrificing girls?" Clara tilted her head. "Not girls." She pointed at Elena. "Stepsisters." Elena backed away slowly. "This isn't real." Clara's smile widened. "Oh, it's real." She leaned closer. "Every generation, the Voss family brings a new daughter into the house." Elena's chest tightened. "A stepdaughter." Clara nodded. "And when the house chooses her," she whispered softly, "she feeds the thing below." Elena ran down the attic stairs. Her heart raced. She rushed outside into the cold air. She needed to leave. She needed to escape. But when she reached the front gate, she froze. The gate was locked. Chains wrapped around it. Thick. No. She looked back at the house. Margaret stood on the porch watching her. Calm. Patient. Like she had been expecting this. Margaret slowly walked down the steps. "Elena," she said gently. "You shouldn't run." Elena's voice cracked. "You're going to kill me." Margaret sighed. "No, child." She stepped closer. "We are going to save the village." Elena shook her head. "You're insane." Margaret leaned forward and whispered something horrifying. "If we don't feed it." She pointed toward the basement. "It will come upstairs." That night the scratching became louder. But now, there were two voices under the basement door. One whispered softly. The other growled like an animal. And both of them kept repeating the same words. Over and over. "The ball, the ball, the ball." Elena sat on her bed shaking. 3 nights. 3 nights until the winter ball. 3 nights until the ritual. 3 nights until the house ate her alive. But what terrified her most was the final sentence she read in the journal. The last line written by someone long ago. A warning. Or maybe a promise. Sometimes, the ugly stepsister does not die. Sometimes, she becomes something worse. The scratching under the basement door did not stop that night. It grew louder. Stronger. Like something heavy was dragging itself across the stone floor below. Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She tried to cover her ears with the pillow. But the voice still reached her. Soft. Hungry. Ugly. Sister. The words crawled into her mind like insects. She sat up suddenly. "I have to know," she whispered. The house was silent. Margaret and Clara were asleep. Or at least Elena hoped they were. She took a lantern and walked slowly down the dark hallway. Each step made the wooden floor creak. The stairs leading to the basement stood at the end of the corridor. Old. Narrow. Cold air drifted up from below. And at the bottom of those stairs, the basement door waited. Elena stood in front of it. 3 locks. 1 chain. The same locks she had checked every night. Her hands trembled. "Maybe it's just animals," she whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew that was a lie. The scratching stopped. The silence was worse. Then the voice returned. Right behind the door. "Open." Elena stepped back. "No." The voice laughed softly. "You already belong to the house." Her lantern flickered. The chain on the door slowly moved. Clink, clink, clink. Elena stared in horror. The chain was loosening by itself. One of the locks dropped to the floor. Clang. Her heart nearly stopped. Another lock twisted. Clack. Then the last lock snapped open. The door creaked slowly. Just a few inches. Darkness spilled out like smoke. And something inside breathed. Elena should have run. Every part of her body screamed to run. But she didn't. Instead, she pushed the door open. The basement smelled like wet earth and rotting wood. Stone walls stretched down into darkness. The lantern light barely reached the bottom of the stairs. But Elena saw something strange carved into the floor. A large circle. Symbols scratched into the stone. Old symbols. Very old. The ritual circle from the journal. She walked down the stairs slowly. Thep, thep, thep. The air grew colder. Then she heard it again. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Close. "Hello," Elena whispered. The lantern shook in her hand. Something moved in the darkness. A long shape sliding across the floor. Wet. Bone scraping against stone. Elena raised the lantern higher. The light touched something pale. Something that looked almost human. But too thin. Too long. Its arms stretched across the floor like broken branches. Its skin looked gray and tight over its bones. And its face. Its face was hidden behind tangled black hair. The creature lifted its head slowly. The lantern light touched its eyes. Elena gasped. They looked exactly like hers. Uneven. Crooked. The same strange eyes. The creature smiled. A wide, unnatural smile filled with sharp teeth. "You came early," it whispered. Elena couldn't move. What are you?" The creature crawled closer. Its bones cracked as it moved. "I am what the house made." It tilted its head. "Just like you." Elena shook her head. "No, I'm not like you." The creature laughed. A horrible, wet sound. "Yes, you are." It pointed one long finger at her. "Look closer." Elena looked down. Her hands were shaking. But something else was wrong. Her fingernails. They looked darker. Longer. Her skin looked pale. Almost gray. The creature smiled wider. "The house is waking inside you." Suddenly a loud voice shouted behind her. "Elena!" She turned. Margaret stood at the top of the stairs. Her face filled with rage. Clara stood behind her, holding a lantern. Margaret rushed down the stairs. "You foolish girl!" she yelled. "You were not supposed to come down here yet." She grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her back. Elena pointed at the creature. "What is that thing?" Margaret looked at it with cold eyes. "That," she said quietly, "is what happens when the ritual fails." Elena's blood froze. "What do you mean?" Margaret looked at the creature. 3 generations ago the chosen girl refused. The creature hissed softly in the darkness. She tried to escape. Margaret continued. "So the house changed her." The creature's long fingers scraped across the floor. "And now she waits here forever." Clara looked at Elena with a cruel smile. "Soon it will be your turn." Elena's heart pounded. "No." Margaret dragged her toward the stairs. "The ball is tomorrow night." The creature whispered from the darkness. "Yes." Its voice echoed across the stone walls. "Tomorrow, the house will finally eat again." Elena looked back one last time. The creature watched her, smiling, hungry, and before the door closed, it whispered something only she could hear. A sentence that made her blood run cold. "Run if you want. But the house already knows your name." The door slammed shut. The locks clicked back into place. But Elena knew something now. Something far worse than the creature in the basement. The ritual wasn't just a sacrifice. The house didn't just want to eat her. It wanted something else. Something deeper. Something waiting inside her blood. The night of the winter ball arrived like a shadow over Brindle Hollow. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, covering the ground in white silence. The village looked peaceful from afar. But anyone looking at the Voss house would see the lights flickering unnaturally, as if the building itself were alive, breathing. Elena stood in her small room, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her dress, plain and gray, hung awkwardly. Clara's, in contrast, gleamed golden under the candlelight. Perfect, beautiful, shiny. And Margaret, she wore black. Always black. Her eyes calm, calculating. Elena tried to steady her shaking hands. She had to survive tonight. Downstairs, the grand hall was already decorated. A chandelier swung gently over the polished floor, though no one had touched it. Strange shadows danced across the walls, twisting into shapes that made Elena's stomach churn. The villagers had arrived. They were polite, smiling, chatting, oblivious. Because none of them knew what this night truly meant. Clara approached Elena with a sweet smile. "Don't be nervous," she said. Elena's jaw tightened. "You're going to betray me tonight, aren't you?" Clara tilted her head. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm just following orders." Elena shivered. Orders from whom? The music began. Slow, haunting. The guests moved in graceful steps, unaware of the whispers drifting from the walls, of cold fingers brushing their necks when no one was behind them. Elena's eyes kept drifting toward the basement door. She could hear it faintly, beneath the floor, scratching and soft laughter. Margaret clapped her hands. "Tonight," she announced, "we honor the tradition of the house." The villagers applauded, thinking it a quaint family ritual. Elena's stomach twisted. She noticed the floor beneath the chandelier. There were symbols carved into the wood, similar to those in the basement. The ritual had started above ground. Clara led Elena to the center of the hall. "Your turn," she said softly. Elena's eyes widened. "My turn for what?" "You know," Clara whispered. "The house chooses." Suddenly, the candles flickered violently. The shadows on the walls stretched like long fingers. Whispers filled the room. Soft, low, hungry. The villagers didn't notice. But Elena did. She looked down at the carved symbols. Her heart sank. They were already filling with black liquid, like ink bleeding from the wood. Elena tried to back away. But Margaret stepped closer. "You must walk willingly," she said. Her voice was calm, almost soothing. "You are the chosen one." Elena shook her head. "No, I'm not." The floor beneath her groaned. The black liquid surged slightly, moving toward her feet. A soft, wet voice echoed from the shadows. "Ugly sister, come to us." Suddenly, Clara's smile twisted. "She's scared," Clara whispered to Margaret. "She will resist. That is good. That is what makes her perfect." Elena froze. Perfect? For what? The chandelier swung violently now, almost hitting the guests. The villagers stepped back nervously, but none dared leave. The house had locked them inside. Then the music stopped. The shadows solidified, rising from the walls like smoke turned to flesh. The black liquid from the floor crawled toward Elena's feet. Her legs were frozen. She could not move. The whispers became voices. "Your blood, your fear, your ugliness belong to us." The crowd began to murmur, confused. Their faces blurred in Elena's vision. And then she realized. She was no longer just Elena. Something inside her stirred. Something the basement creature had promised. Something older than the house itself. The chandelier cracked and fell, but it stopped just above Elena. Not touching her. The shadows parted, forming a dark, crawling figure behind her. And the thing beneath the house whispered in her mind. "Finally, the ugly stepsister awakens." Elena screamed. The shadows surged toward her, but something inside her pushed back. A new power. Cold. Sharp. Hungry. She realized she did not have to be a victim. The house wanted her to fear it. But the house had chosen wrong. And tonight, she would choose her own fate. The chaos of the winter ball did not end with screams. The chandeliers swung wildly, candles shattered, and shadows crawled across the walls. The villagers ran for the doors, but the house had them trapped. Every exit was blocked, twisted into the walls themselves. Elena stood in the center of the hall, trembling, but something inside her no longer feared. The creature from the basement stirred. Its voice whispered again, closer now, inside her mind. "Come, join us. The house wants you." Elena shook her head, her eyes glowing faintly. "No," she said. "The house doesn't want me. I choose." Suddenly, the black liquid from the floor surged upward, trying to pull her down. The shadows reached for her like hands of smoke. Elena felt herself sinking, but then the power inside her surged. She raised her hands. The black liquid recoiled. The shadows froze mid-motion. A deep, echoing laugh filled the hall. Not from Margaret. Not from Clara. Not even from the creature below. It came from Elena. The villagers froze, staring in horror as the air grew cold and the shadows bent toward her. Margaret appeared, stepping closer, calm as ever. "You see," she said softly, "the chosen one is awakening." Clara screamed. Her perfect face twisted in fear. "You're not supposed to have that power." Clara yelled, shaking. Elena smiled, her crooked grin mirroring the creatures from the basement. "I'm not just chosen," Elena said quietly. "I'm everything the house wanted, and more." The basement door slammed open. The creature climbed up the stairs, dragging itself over the carved symbols on the floor. Its long fingers scraped the wood, creating deep gouges that hissed with smoke. It lunged at Elena. But she stepped forward calmly. The shadows around her rose like a shield. The creature recoiled. Its mouth opened wide, screaming, "You, ugly one! You are mine!" Elena's voice rang out, cold and commanding. "No. I am mine." The black liquid froze midair. The shadows shrieked and writhed, then collapsed into nothing. The basement creature hissed one last time before being pulled back down, as if the house itself rejected it. Clara fell to the floor, crying, You can't. You're supposed to die." Elena stepped toward her stepsister. She could have struck her, could have destroyed her with the power surging inside her, but she did not. Instead, she whispered, "You will learn. The house chooses those who obey. I choose myself." Margaret's face turned pale. She tried to step forward, but the shadows wrapped around her, holding her in place. The villagers ran screaming, stumbling over the now frozen black liquid. The house shuddered. Its walls groaned, as if angry or maybe afraid. Elena looked around. The hall was empty except for her, Clara, and the frozen figures of her stepmother. The voice from the basement echoed one last time. "The ugly stepsister has become the house." Elena smiled. She knew she was no longer just Elena. She was power. She was darkness. She was everything the house had been waiting for, and more. The winter ball was over. The villagers would never enter the Voss house again. And in the shadows, Elena waited, patient, cunning, and hungry. The house had chosen wrongly. She had chosen herself. The house was quiet again, but only for a moment. Elena stood in the grand hall, surrounded by the frozen remnants of her stepsister Clara and her stepmother Margaret. The shadows had retreated, but the power inside her was fully awake now. It pulsed in her veins, like a cold heartbeat that matched the house itself. The basement door creaked open slowly. The creature, half human, half shadow, rose from the darkness. Its eyes, the same as Elena's, gleamed with hunger. "You belong to me," it hissed. Elena smiled, crooked and sharp, the same way the creature had smiled at her before. "No," she whispered. "I am you. I am the house now." With a wave of her hand, the shadows erupted. They wrapped around the creature, constricting it like living chains. The basement thing screamed, its long limbs thrashing against the invisible bonds, but it could not escape. Elena's laughter echoed through the hall, cold and hollow. The house seemed to shiver in response. The walls bent, the windows darkened, and the chandelier above swung violently once, then fell silent. Elena stepped forward. Every step made the floorboards hiss. The black liquid from the ritual circle spread, weaving itself into the wood and walls. The Voss house was alive, and it had merged with her. Clara tried to crawl away. "You can't do this," she cried, her voice trembling. Elena knelt beside her stepsister. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Do you see now?" she whispered. "The house doesn't take the ugly stepsister because she is weak. It takes her because she can survive it." Clara's tears froze in midair. She was trapped, paralyzed by Elena's power. Margaret screamed, trying to fight the shadows that wrapped around her like icy ropes. "You were supposed to protect her," Margaret yelled. Elena's voice was soft, almost tender. "I protected myself." The shadows tightened. Margaret's cries faded. The house groaned, swallowing the sounds. Outside, the villagers could hear faint whispers through the walls. Windows rattled. Doors shook. But no one dared approach. Brindle Hollow had always feared the Voss house, but now they would never forget why. Inside, Elena walked toward the basement door. She could hear the creature struggling below, but she did not hesitate. She opened the door and leaned over the stairs, looking into the darkness. "You wanted me," she said. "Here I am." The basement thing lunged, but Elena stretched her hand down. The shadows followed her command, wrapping around it. The creature screamed, then vanished into the blackness. The door slammed shut. Silence returned. Elena turned back into the hall. The Voss house seemed to breathe with her. The walls pulsed, the candles flickered, and the shadows moved at her command. She looked at Clara one last time. The girl was alive, but changed. Pale. Frozen. Afraid. "Remember this," Elena said. "The ugly stepsister never dies. She becomes something else." The power inside her hummed. She could feel the generations of Voss girls before her, trapped, waiting, feeding the house. Their faces flickered in her mind, but now she was the last. She could feel the house bending to her will. By dawn, the winter ball was nothing more than a frozen memory. The villagers would whisper about the screams, the black snow, and the strange lights that flickered through the Voss house that night. But Elena sat in the grand hall, crooked smile on her face, shadows swirling around her like a crown. She was no longer a girl. She was the house. She was the darkness. She was the ugly stepsister, and now she would choose who came next. The house had waited centuries for her. And finally, it had her. The end.